Good morning. Welcome back to Taylor Time Live. I'm your host, Seth Gladden, and today we're going to be continuing our series on selling more adhesives. I'm excited about today because April 22 is actually Earth Day, so we can call this Earth Week. And we're going to be talking about sustainability. If you've missed our previous episodes, just go check those out on our YouTube channel. You can also find them. We go live on our Facebook as well. And you can keep up, or catch up, I should say, with the content we've been doing this year. So without further ado, though, I'm excited about today. I've got a good friend of mine who's also an expert in sustainability that's going to be joining us. So Kim, it is great to have you here. Thank you for joining us.
Hi, everybody. I'm excited about Earth Week too.
Good. So Kim, you've agreed to come in and join us for today's topic. Would you mind first, though, telling us a little bit about yourself, what you've been doing with sustainability in the industry, and where you're at currently, and then we'll kind of jump in.
So I've had a bit of a path to get to sustainability and have a lot of interest in sustainability. My previous position, I was a material specialist at an architecture firm that designed and built buildings. And now I actually work for a manufacturer, Meadows, that creates a lot of building envelope products. So now I'm kind of working back in manufacturing again and helping them promote sustainability transparency with their products. I also am a well-accredited professional. I have a lead interior design and construction accredited professional Fitwell ambassador. I'm also on the Green Build 2023 advisory board and the Health Product Declaration Collaborative Technical Advisory Group, and a few other groups, Design for Freedom Roundtable and Mindful Materials Outreach. So
yeah,
I'm trying to have my fingers in as many pots as possible.
That's a little bit of a list for sure. So, well, again,
and in my free time, I think about sustainability.
Yeah, I think I met you at a Green Build. It was either a Green Build or a Neocon years ago. So, and at that point, we were talking about mindful materials. So, well, Kim, it's great to have you here today. Our topic is on sustainability, but we named it Steps to a Greener Future. We're dealing with salespeople specifically this year. Our topic is selling more adhesive for the year. So we're talking to salespeople in the flooring industry. So that could be a distributor salesperson. It could be an OEM, like a manufacturer, salesperson. It could be someone at retail. And so that's kind of our target for this. What should flooring salespeople know about sustainability?
Well, in our short call today, I'll just try to list a few things because we could probably spend quite a bit of time on it. But basically, some of the biggest, overarching declarations and certifications would be environmental product declarations, VOC content and emissions testing, as well as health product declarations, red list free products through the Declare declaration, and then cradle to cradle certifications. So there's quite a few of them.
Yeah, that is quite a few. And I know that was a really quick list. There's probably a lot more than that, but let's take a look at some of those one by one. So I think you started with declarations and certifications, right? So can you tell us a little bit more about those?
Sure. There's the major groups are life cycle assessment declaration, which is an environmental product declaration, and that looks at the carbon footprint of materials. And then you've got VOC content and emissions testing, and those actually look at the VOC content of products, and that's the VOCs that are inside the product. And then you've got VOC emissions, and that's the VOCs that come out of the products. And so there's quite a few different certifying bodies that do those testings. And then the last grouping there on the right-hand side is ingredient disclosures. And basically, this is ingredient lists that show what kind of ingredients you have in your products, and then what are the hazards associated with those ingredients. That's a pretty brief description. So.
Yeah. Well, and I think this sums it up nicely. So thanks for sending this slide over for us. But VOC, I think life cycle is obviously important. VOCs, ingredient disclosure, all of that. But VOCs are a big conversation in flooring. It's a term that we hear a lot. And so
Right.
can you walk us through a little bit of what VOCs maybe are, and then kind of what that impact is and what to look for?
So with VOCs, there's VOC content and emissions, and sometimes products that have really low VOC content actually are big emitters. So you can't really look at one without the other. And there's really nothing to say that something that has a low VOC content is okay. So unfortunately, you have to keep digging.
Yeah, sure. Okay.
And the reason why that's important is because we do spend so much time indoors. And I'm wondering, Seth, maybe you can give us the answer of how much time you think we actually spend indoors.
Oh, yeah, here we go. I mean, if I was guessing, I enjoy hiking and getting out as much as I can, but I would say probably the average person, clearly A is not right because most of us work inside, so I would say probably B, like around 85, 90%, somewhere in there.
I don't know if you'd be surprised to hear that 93% of your time is spent indoors.
Wow.
The average American.
I actually am.
Yeah, actually.
That's a lot of time.
It is. And in fact, the EPA says that 87% of your time is spent indoors, and then 6% of your time is spent in your automobile, which I think is crazy. And I think if you live up north, you probably even spend more time indoors. But
yeah. Is this pre-COVID or is this current?
These are our pre-COVID stats. So
yeah, gotcha.
I think we need to probably add more time onto that.
Yeah, more time indoors and less in the car maybe, but yeah.
Yeah,
that's a lot of time.
Because we spend so much time indoors, I think, the indoor air quality is very important, and that's why we're talking about VOCs and VOC content and trying to keep those things low. And if you go to the next slide, you'll see this chart that shows you all the different contaminants that can happen in the indoor space. And basically, most of them are brought in from the outside. So we are actually bringing those inside.
Okay.
So inadequate ventilation is...
Yeah, I see contamination from fabrics, and then inside the building, you're saying, is that 16%?
Right. And that's from, all the things that you bring inside.
Right.
And if you go to the next slide, there's some really interesting facts here that, that your indoor air is can be up to 2 to 5 times more polluted than the outside air.
How many people do you think know that? I don't feel like
probably not too many.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That
surprised me as well.
That's a terrifying number. Especially in pollen season, right? For those of us that have allergies. So
exactly. Every time you open that door, you're just letting that pollen inside.
Yeah.
So 20% of the indoor contaminants come from the indoor environment.
Wow.
Yeah.
So clearly VOCs are a big deal.
Yeah, they're a really big deal. One of the big offenders is formaldehyde. Basically, you find formaldehyde in a lot of familiar products. If you go to the next slide, it basically off-gases from foam insulation, plywood, carpeting, particle board, all different types of glues and adhesives, and then, of course, tobacco smoke. So,
okay.
We've got some more emitters, volatile organic compounds, and paints and cleaners and things like that as well.
Right. So you mentioned formaldehyde too, but VOCs is that one, and this is where we hear the term, in flooring a lot, and I think it's probably even in here somewhere, is probably adhesives. Yeah, paints and cleaning.
Any coatings, right? Yeah. And another ingredient that's found in a lot of wet applied products is isocyanates. And I don't know if you know this, but it's the #1 contributor of work-related asthma. So,
we definitely have heard that, but there's still a lot of isocyanates in, or I shouldn't say a lot, but there's still isocyanates in a lot of specifically hardwood flooring if it's a urethane product. And so, it is a huge... I don't know. Do I call it an issue?
I think it's an issue if it's the biggest contributor of asthma, right?
Yeah.
So
of
work-related asthma.
Yeah, which is a big, and I believe it's also, isocyanates are also a carcinogen, I think. Could be wrong in that, but
Right, right.
but yeah,
So I think that combined with formaldehyde, there's a lot of formaldehyde in wood flooring as well. All of those things help contribute to the body burden that we have with all of these indoor air contaminants. So it's really important to try to keep those down.
yeah. So
So this,
when you're talking about keeping them down, I think, did you have another chart here?
I do, yeah. The next chart, I think is kind of surprising. It shows on the right, just look at the right-hand side for now, but these gold bars or yellow bars.
Yeah.
But coatings and adhesives is that second bar. But the last one is personal care products. So the amount of VOCs that are emitted from personal care products is about the same as coatings and
Wow.
inks and adhesives that we bring into our indoor airspace. So
Yeah.
that kind of surprised me. Yeah.
Now, at Taylor Adhesives, we're going to try to blame mostly the coatings and the inks for that. But it is true, if
That's right.
you think like a can of paint and you pop the lid on that and there's that smell that hits you. Obviously,
Right.
smell doesn't always equate, VOCs, but or
And
maybe
a lot
it
of
does.
cleaners too. People don't think about it because they think cleaners are making things clean, but
Sure.
you know,
Yeah. Well, you would
yeah,
hope
there's
they
a
are,
lot of
but
odors. Yeah, right.
so yeah, and then
Keep your
clearly there's
windows open.
a lot of other sources here, but just the comparison, I think, to me is surprising of how much
Isn't it?
how much VOCs come from things that, like you said, that we do inside. Pesticides, hopefully not as much, but versus on-road gasoline exhaust way over here. Diesel.
Right. So if you live by a road, those folks that live near highways and things like that, they're exposed to more of those types of VOCs.
Yeah.
And then the
Uh,
pesticides, you bring those in, on your clothes or your feet if you're walking through areas that have been treated. So, it all kind of makes its way inside.
Yeah. So now you've scared us, right, with VOCs. So hopefully there's a solution.
Don't be scared. Don't be scared.
Yeah, permit's going to live. But I think for a flooring salesperson or a flooring adhesive salesperson, or really any of us in the industry, should be familiar with these terms. We should be familiar with what they mean, and then also with what to look for. So, Kim, when it comes to VOCs, is there a quick way to know if a product is a low VOC product or not, and how do we do that?
Yeah, actually there is. If you go to the next slide, it's going to show you some certifications, and these all indicate that products have been tested against certain chemicals of concern and that they're below those thresholds.
Okay.
So this is an easy way to find out if your product has lower VOCs. So
Yeah.
they go by different names. It makes it a little confusing, but Green Guard Gold or Indoor Advantage Gold or CRI Green Label Plus, that's the carpet low VOC testing label, and then Floor Score is more of a hard surface, like resilient flooring, and that tells you that your resilient flooring has lower VOCs. So by looking for these different symbols, yeah. Sorry.
What are the differences between these, and when you're looking at a product, what should a salesperson know when they're looking, if they see a Floor Score versus a Green Guard? What does that mean?
So basically, they're all tested to similar criteria. They are tested to the California Department of Public Health criteria, and it's looking at a certain set of chemicals and then their emissions thresholds. And so all of these products go into a chamber where the air is measured for these different chemicals, and if it has to all the chemicals have to be below a certain level to get these labels. The only one that's a little bit different is Green Guard Gold, and they actually test for 35 chemicals of concern. So they test for a few more chemicals than the CDPH requirement, but they also meet that threshold for the California Department of Public Health.
Yeah.
So, and they were the leaders. California was the leaders in coming out with this many, many years ago. So it's been adopted by the entire country. Yeah.
Yeah, they typically are, and that's CDPH Rule 1168, right? for anyone
Yeah,
who wants
it's
to look that
also
up.
the old name is actually 1168 is the VOC content.
Okay.
This is VOC emissions. So it was also known as Cal 1350. You may have heard of it called
Yep.
that for a while,
Okay.
but it's been superseded by the um, the really easy acronym CDPH.
Gotcha. Okay.
So, California
So
Department of Public Health. So
so if I'm a salesperson and I'm looking at these and I see a product with you're saying any one of these five, it's going to indicate low VOC. Is that correct?
correct.
Okay.
Yes.
And then really the only one that has a little bit more stringent out of these is the Green Guard Gold.
Green Guard Gold, right. And then there's also inherently non-emitting products. So these products will never emit VOCs because of their nature. So you've got your stone, your ceramic, mostly very hard, highly vitreous products don't emit VOCs. So you're
Right.
always safe picking those types of products. But you do have to worry about the different coatings that might go on them. So if
Sure.
you put on, an organic coating or some kind of binder or sealant, now you do have to consider if that product has higher VOCs or not.
Right. Okay. So if you're in the flooring world, look for these.
Know
These
this.
all mean these all mean good things, but they're all similar, right? So
Very similar, yeah.
so another thing that we hear, and you mentioned all the way back in the beginning, was HPDs. What's the deal with HPDs? How do they differ from certifications? Maybe walk us through those a little bit.
So the last grouping of grouping of certifications we talked about was for VOCs. So health product declarations actually deal with ingredient transparency and their hazards. So if you go to the next slide, it actually will tell you a little bit more about it. We're actually looking at 18 human health and environmental endpoints that are reviewed. So basically the ingredients are evaluated on a scale of 1 to 4. So
Okay.
benchmark 4 ingredients are the preferred or safer ingredients, and benchmark 1 are the worst in class ingredients. And those would be like asbestos and formaldehyde and those types of ingredients. Benchmark 4 ingredient would be something like water.
Okay.
So you basically want to look for products that have less benchmark 1 ingredients and more benchmark 4 ingredients if you can.
Yeah.
So they're also measured to, go ahead.
Oh, I was just going to say, how often do you see HPDs in the world of flooring? Do you see a lot of flooring materials that have HPDs, or is this still pretty rare?
I think the flooring industry was one of the first adopters of HPDs, so it's pretty prolific. It's easy to find in most cases. Yeah.
Good. Okay. But just knowing the differences here and what to look for when they do that, and then I'm noticing here it's saying measured down to 1,000 parts per million, right?
For lead compliancy, 1,000 parts per million is the threshold. Manufacturers can report to different levels, but 1,000 is the minimum. And if you go to the next slide, there's a really good illustration that shows you what ingredient transparency looks like at different parts per million. So, for instance, 15,000 parts per million only shows 2 ingredients for this really tasty product, right? Just cake and cream.
Now,
once you get down,
I have to give you a little bit of grief on this. My brother works at McKee Foods, so we need to have a Swiss roll or something up here, but that's okay. We'll go with the Twinkie.
We can do that next time.
We'll go with the Twinkie. But sorry, you were telling us kind of the different what that looks like in the real world, right?
Right. So when you're reporting to 15,000 parts per million, and that's typically what you'd find on an SDS, right?
Okay.
That's the granularity you get is just 2 ingredients. So as you go to smaller parts per million, there's more ingredients that are revealed.
Right. Yeah.
So lead compliancy is to 1,000 parts per million, and manufacturers are reporting to 100 parts per million, which, as you can see, I think have a little more peace of mind even with products that have a 100 parts per million reporting because there's more transparency.
Yeah. Well, you get a lot more information than just cake and cream. So, Yeah,
I think that's the only information I really want, though.
right. Yeah, maybe
For
sometimes
that
not
product,
even that.
anyway.
Yeah,
I
sometimes not
know.
even that.
I
Like,
just want to eat it.
it's good for you to eat food, right? So just eat this. Um,
That's right.
so you also talked about cradle to cradle. I know we gave a lot of terms at the beginning, but cradle to cradle is
I
something
know.
else, and that is something that's definitely important. And we will see that on different products. Talk to us a little bit about cradle to cradle.
So cradle to cradle, in my opinion, has a bit more rigor. So not only is it looking at the VOC content or the hazards of the ingredients, but it calls for continual improvement for manufacturers. So if you do have an ingredient that is, a higher benchmark number or a worst in class offender, manufacturers that work towards minimizing that ingredient or removing it entirely. That is the whole premise of Cradle to Cradle, is continual improvement as well as disclosures. So
Right.
with HPD, it's basically a snapshot in time, whereas Cradle to Cradle asks for continual improvement over time.
Okay. Yeah, so definitely a different focus of tell us
There's a
what's
lot
in
more
it
to it, but
versus tell us
that's all
where
we
you're
have
headed.
time for today.
Sure.
Right.
Yeah, I know. We're blazing through it though. This is a lot of great information.
We're trying to.
Um,
Yes.
So when you look at these, you've kind of got 5 icons down here.
Right.
The one I'm familiar with that we have several products, and a lot of people in flooring I think would be familiar with the material health, all the way over there, the
material
green
health,
one.
right. Right.
But what are these different ones, and which ones should flooring people be concerned about?
So material reutilization would be take-back programs that a company would have, and making something else out of their product or making it back into the existing product that they already sell. Also, manufacturing processes like as renewable energy use. That's the orange icon there. So it's basically a point-based system, like most of these programs are. And if
Right.
you contribute in more categories, then the higher level of certification you get. Water conservation is also awarded. And then if you have social fairness and equity programs in your manufacturing and at your company, then those are awarded points as well.
Okay. So these
So
are
it's really looking at the holistic. Yeah,
Yeah.
it's a lot more holistic than just a hazard of an ingredient, right? Would you agree?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So
Yeah.
keep your eye out for these as well, and those will tell you kind of what a company is doing and how they're geared towards sustainability. So, I love the charts. This is super helpful for me, and I'm hopeful for everyone viewing as well. Kim, you also talked about red list, right?
Right.
What is the red list? How often does that thing change? What are we looking at with the red list, and why does that matter?
So the red list was created by a number of different groups or individuals, and basically it's calling out the worst in class chemicals regarding hazards to human and environmental health. And in this particular list, it's just a very short list. It's updated fairly frequently, but it's actually doing is adding more of one class of an ingredient that they find hazardous. Typically, it's supported by authoritative studies. And if you go to the next slide, you can also see that there are many organizations out there that have their own red list, but they all agree, if you look at the central area, they all agree that there are certain bad actors out there that are they all consider bad, right? So most every group considers formaldehyde as a bad actor, or hydrofluorocarbons as a bad actor, phthalates.
Right.
PFAS is another grouping of ingredients that is typically agreed not to be a very good ingredient for human and environmental health. So I think this Venn diagram,
Yeah, as I'm looking at this, I guess, as you're talking about it, so like here's the EPA, right? So you're saying the EPA cares about these things, but then you have like Perkins and Will, which is a huge architecture firm, right? And they care about
have their
a lot
own
of things. Or Living Building Challenge, the LBC, right? So, so that's what you're talking about when you say there's all these different organizations, and they all have their own.
Right. So the lead pilot had its own subset of red list ingredients, and those have been expanded upon we probably need to update this chart a little bit, but it's getting bigger.
Yeah, but I mean, that it gives you a really good idea of what to look out for. But red list is all encompassing, right? It's all of these things. It's not any
Correct.
one
And
of
somebody
the,
said, well, yeah, somebody said of the red list, which is the worst? And I'm like, they're all the worst.
it's the red
It's
list,
not like it's the red list. Everything is not. Yeah, it's all the worst in class ingredients
Yeah.
for human health and environmental health. So
Yeah. So, Kim, I guess we're getting close to time here, but I really want to make sure that anyone that's watching, especially if they're a salesperson, and how to sell more. So we've talked about a ton of great content, and you've defined a lot of stuff for us. How is that helpful, and what does a salesperson need to look out for or do to be able to sell that sustainability aspect when they're talking about flooring?
I was thinking a little bit about that the other day, and I think just being aware of what is in your products and being able to communicate that effectively with your customers is really important, because we only have one set of lungs, right? And we're all breathing the same air, right? So it really behooves us to use the best products in our indoor space so that we're not breathing all these contaminants. Because even though there might be acceptable levels of certain VOC emissions out there, once you add those to the other acceptable levels for all the other materials in your indoor space, that body burden gets pretty high. Right. And people are sensitive to that, and it helps. It actually lowers IQ. There's more sick days. There's higher incidence of cancer for those exposed to these types of ingredients. So we just want to keep those down as low as possible. And it's not just for the occupants of the building. I think we're always thinking that, but it's also the folks that need to install those products and be around the products when the building's being built. And we don't want them exposed to those ingredients either. Yeah. Or those people in the factory who are actually making them, right? So
yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and I think you said it, but when we're looking at it, I mean, you talked about California, and they're kind of the first ones usually to adopt anything new, and then the country starts, kind of paying attention to that. So not only is it kind of the future of like sustainability is a huge push, which is good, but also I do think it will, what would I say? I think it will impact sales. And if a flooring salesperson knows the differences and knows how to explain this to a customer, even today, I think it makes a difference. But as you look towards the future of flooring, I think it will continue to be more and more important. I don't know what your opinion on that is.
There's a demand for it. Yeah, there's a demand for it. And in the past, people used to say it was more expensive, but I think that's not really an issue anymore. I think it's becoming more the way we're doing business. And there are more choices out there that are cost competitive.
Yeah. So lots of good news, lots of good information. Kim, is there anything else you would say to a person in the flooring world when it comes to sustainability?
I think we just need more awareness out there, just like with everything, right? The more aware you are, the better decisions you can make. And me and Kermit want to wish everybody a happy Earth Week.
That's right. And I almost forgot, Kim, but you mentioned it, but there are some great resources. And so that's everything from Mindful Materials is a great database, but do you have any quick resources that you could give that you would recommend people get familiar with to be more successful?
Yeah, there's some really good aggregated databases out there. Ecomedes.com, it's ECOMEDES.com, is a really good aggregated source for certifications. There's also UL Spot has a nice aggregation tool for their certified products, Cradle to Cradle, of course, and then HPDC, the Health Product Declaration Collaborative Repository, has a really great library of products that have gone the extra mile to figure out what is in their products and what the hazards are. So,
okay.
I think we're going to have a packet for people that they can download later.
We're hoping to, yes.
Or
So
document? Oh,
yep.
should I have not said that?
No, we'll do our best to make that available because this has been awesome information. So yeah, we'll
Okay.
find a way to make it available. So
All right.
well, Kim, thank you so much for joining us. It's been awesome
Well,
to
thanks
see
for
you.
having me. This has been really fun.
Yeah, we'll try to have you on again for maybe a sustainability 102 or 402 or whatever we would call it. So, but thank you so much,
Okay.
Kim.
All right. Happy Earth Week.
You too. That is all the time we have for today. So I would just like to thank you for taking the time to tune in. Invite you to come back every third Tuesday at 11:30 a.m. Go and find us on social media, like us, follow us, see what we're up to, check out our website. And as always, remember, at Taylor Adhesives, we are with you every step.